Hello, Lawton Elementary students. Welcome to the Lawton Public Museum. We're sorry that you can't come visit us personally, so we're going to come to you today. And we're going to share some things here in the Lawton Public Museum of some interest, and we're going to talk about its history a little bit. Lawton got its name because of this man right here. His name is Nathan Lawton. He never lived here, but when property first became available to purchase, as the state of Michigan came into existence in 1837, a lot of people out east bought property. And this man was from New York, and he bought some property in this area. Now, there were a few settlers in this area. In fact, the Nesbitt family and the Bitely family predate Lawton, but they were settlers here. And Lawton is actually an accident. Lawton was not a planned town. The railroad was supposed to follow the territorial road which it went through Paw Paw, which can date back to 1829. It was vital that Detroit and Chicago be hooked up by railroad to save a lot of time in shipping as they had to go on the Great Lakes. So the people in Paw Paw thought, hey, we're going to make some lot of money here. They demanded such high prices for their property that they said, no, we're just going to redraw the line. So they talked to some people and they got property rights. And Mr. Lawton actually, not only did he sell some property, he donated some property. And that was where they made a depot, not the depot you see today. That's actually the second one that was built about 30 years later. But anyway, in 1848, the railroad made it to here. And so they had to have a little depot. We needed to get people to Paw Paw, so they had a depot here. So people could get off. Then they would take like what you call a Uber driver today or a taxi. They would have stagecoaches or buggies, and then they would take people to Paw Paw as they needed. So we were known as Paw Paw Station for 3 years. It wasn't until 1851 that we actually took the name of Lawton, and then in 1858 we officially became a village. Now, Mr. Lawton never lived here, but two of his sons came out here and made their homes and raised their families, and there are still some descendants of the Lawton family living here today, not with the Lawton name, through marriages and so forth, but the Wording family and the Addington family can trace their roots back to this man right here, Nathan Lawton. So the people ask me how old Lawton is, all I got to basically do is add 100 years to my age, and I can tell you how old Lawton is. So technically, we are 162 years old. That's as of 1858 when we officially became a village. But we can add 10 years to that. As I said, 1848 was when the depot first got here with the railroad. Little businesses started creeping up, so the depot, then we had the livery, which would transport people. A hotel opened up and a little general store, and that was how it all started. The rest is history. And just for the record, Decatur owes us the same thing. Decatur was not a town either. The railroad went through that way, and people migrated to the railroad tracks, and that's how Decatur was born as well in 1848. So we have a lot of artifacts here, some that deal with Lawton, some just with Michigan history, maybe Van Buren County history, or maybe the surrounding towns. But we also have a lot of artifacts that just show a different way of life, how early people had to live and some of the things they do. Some of those things are still in use today. Some people prefer to use those methods and so forth. But we also have quite an eclectic mix of things. A gentleman by the name of Carl Benton was the man who actually came up with the idea of creating a museum. And he had a lot of interest. As you can see here, he was into geology. He loved that kind of thing. Native American, we have a lot of arrowheads and so forth. And he was responsible for getting a lot of those. A lot of these arrowheads can still be found today when the farmers are out tilling the ground in the spring especially. They can still turn up a lot of arrowheads, especially out on what we call the Valley Road. That was a predominant Native American trail. And so a lot of things can be found out that way. Mrs. Ott, who was a teacher here in Lawton for many years, her family can date themselves back to around the 1850s or so, when they moved out here. This was her Campfire Girl outfit, and she made this herself. The Campfire Girls, they were kind of the precursor to what we know as the Girl Scouts. And I think they did coexist for quite a few years. I don't believe the Campfire Girls are in existence anymore, but this was her outfit that she made and she wore. These were some of the beads that she would get for rewards or for maybe projects that they were involved in and so forth. As we wander on down this way a little bit, we have a lot of old baking and cooking tools that would be used. You don't have modern day stoves. They would have basically a stove that you would kind of heat up with wood and so forth. And that's for baking or muffins, things of that nature. There's like some old toasters in here. Also, there's some candle making devices and so forth. So it just kind of gives you an idea of how people had to live and what they had to go through. We take things for granted, but back then everything was physical. Making dinner, making lunch, making breakfast, all those things were physical. You had to have wood to heat with, so you had to cut wood, you had to split wood, you had to haul wood to the house. You didn't have indoor plumbing, you didn't have electric, so candles were essential. You had to have water for cooking and so forth, so you had to go to the well and carry water to get back in. Everything required effort and work. So everybody in the household, once you were old enough to walk around and do something, you had chores. It might be out feeding the chickens. You didn't just go to Walmart or Meijer's or your local grocery store. Those were far and few between. Not Walmart, obviously, but just a store in general. So you had to have things. You had to grow your own vegetables. You grew your crops. You raised chickens. You might have a cow or two, for meat or for dairy. All those things required work, and every member of the family were involved in making those things happen on a day-to-day basis. As we walk down here, we have a salt and pepper shaker, that collection that Mrs. Shagoon had donated several years ago. This was something that she was an avid collector of. You're going to see a couple things here. In 1858, as I mentioned earlier, that's when Lawton officially became a village. So in 1958, they had their 100-year anniversary, the centennial. Now, the centennial was held in September of 1958. I was born in October of 1958, but I still remember the parade. Those bands were loud. They were so loud I could still hear them even though I was still inside my mother at that time. Kind of gives you an idea of just what a celebration that was. As we look upon here, a lot of amazing things. You're going to see a picture of Theodore Roosevelt, who was one of our presidents and one of my favorite presidents. And he was here in 1902 on a campaign drive and spoke to the locals here who gathered down by the depot. We got some more salt and pepper shakers, just a lot of variation of things. These are some things that a woman might have on her dresser, just some things of that nature. Just some basic things that people would use. We have some Boy Scouts, we have Girl Scouts memorabilia here that have been donated over the years. There's also other clubs involved with Lawton, the Masons. There was a group called the Odd Fellows that was here. Of course, the Lions Club. There was the JC. So there's been lots of civic clubs over the years that have helped to keep Lawton thriving and so forth. But we've tried to maintain as much as we can. We're always encouraging people, if they come across things, it's a great way to preserve your legacy, your family's legacy, of having this stuff on display. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people will ask me, why do you have a copy of the movie North by Northwest in your museum? Well, because Lawton's in this movie. In 1958, this movie was made. Cary Grant, one of my favorite actors, Eva Marie Saint. The film was basically shot on location. It was an Alfred Hitchcock movie. Great film. It's still considered to this day one of the 100 greatest movies ever made. The film starts in New York City, and it has this climax on top of Mount Rushmore. When the train he's on, he's going to Mount Rushmore, they're in the Chicago train station, and there's a scene that was shot in the station, and if you pay close attention, over the PA system, you can hear the PA announcer saying, train bound for Detroit with stops in Michigan City, Niles, Dowagiac, Lawton, Kalamazoo, Battle Creek, and then so forth on to Detroit. So, I love to tell people, Lawton is in an Alfred Hitchcock movie. So as we move along a little bit, now I'm really having a trouble. All my friends are sending me text messages, and for some reason, I send these, I could do these text messages and I try and send it, but I don't think they're getting them because no one ever texts me back. So I'm really having an issue with that. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I S-E-N-D, send, nothing, I don't know what's going on. But, phone cameras, smile. I can't figure out what I can't figure out what button you push to take a picture. It's so confusing. I don't, hello? There's no one there. I don't know. No one there. It's confusing. And another text message machine that doesn't work. I don't get it. Maybe someone can come down here and teach me how to use these things so I can send text messages. Please. So let's walk on down this way a little bit. Now over here we have a lot of old schools, pictures and so forth from various years. Back once upon a time, they had these long panographs. They would get every school kid and put them in front of the school and take a picture. And if you look at the pictures really close, there's a lot of dour looks. People didn't smile. It took a lot of time to get all these kids together and get them all set to take a picture. They probably sat there for 20 minutes or 30 minutes while they're trying to get everything together. So they're probably like, hey, let's get this over with. But that's why if you look at these old pictures, you don't see very many smiles. Come over this way and move this out of the way. A lot of old toys and such. A lot of toys that were handmade. Some old dollhouse furniture that was handmade for someone's child. Some of these things are still in existence. You know, you'll see an Etch-a-Sketch down there. You can still find an Etch-a-Sketch. There's something down there that's called a witchy board, and that was kind of like the what we know today as a Ouija board. You probably haven't seen it, but I'm sure your parents are pretty familiar with the Ouija board. Down in this area, you'll see a lot of old school pictures, sports teams and so forth. A lot of compilation pictures. You know, some date way back to the early 1900s. It's just kind of fun to see. My family dates back to the 1890s, so it's just fun for me to see grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins that have all gone through Lawton schools and are part of some of this pictures and some of this history. There's a picture here I always like to share with people. You probably won't be able to see it very well, but this is a military picture from 1923 that was taken at Camp Grayling, a little bit after World War I. And what I like about this picture, everybody talks about how, photo bombs in these days. Well, you know what? They were doing photo bombs back in 1923 because there's a couple guys here peeking out of these tents behind doing their little photo bomb. So that's nothing new. That's been going on for years. Again, we got a lot of school things. Hey, that's my old gym bag. Wow, imagine that. So we got a lot of things here. Lawton Blue Devil emblem has changed over the years. You'll see some different variations down here of the Blue Devil emblem. And what a lot of people don't know is that at one point, Lawton was called the Lawton Grape Belters. It wasn't until 1949 that we became the Lawton Blue Devils because the students just disliked that name so well. So just a little piece of history there. There was a gentleman, his name was Charlie Maxwell. I shouldn't say it was, it still is. He's still with us. I think he's about 94 years old. He graduated from Lawton in 1944. And he went on to have a very successful professional baseball career, playing with the Boston Red Sox, the Detroit Tigers, and the Chicago White Sox. He lives in Paw Paw. His nickname was Old Paw Paw. That's where he made his home. But here's a picture of Charlie. He was on the basketball team. That's him, number 10. He was a very good basketball player as well as a baseball player. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that that's my great uncle, Uncle Teeter, and they remained lifelong friends. When my Uncle Teeter got sick with cancer, Charlie was there quite often, offering encouragement and support. So as we look around here a little bit, I kind of mentioned my great-great-grandfather came to Lawton in 1892. Now, he was a Civil War veteran from Pennsylvania, and after the war, he went to work for the railroad. And at some point, he came out to Michigan, and then in the Galesburg area. Then around 1892, he was transferred to Lawton, and he was the crossing guard. Now, obviously, we didn't have cars in 1892, but there were still a lot of buggies, stagecoach, horses, bicycles, foot traffic. So whenever a train would come through, and there were a lot more trains back in those days, he would have to go out there with a stop sign and stop traffic. And here's a picture of my great-great-grandfather. And that's his little building that he would stand in and keep all the elements, rain, snow, and that sort of thing. But he did that until he retired, and I'm not sure what age he retired, but he was a very elderly man when he finally retired. Now, speaking of family, My grandfather ran a gas station in Lawton for over 40 years. And for the last 25 years, or maybe even 30 years or so, this is what the building looked like. It was added on to over the years, but this is what it finally looked like. The building was torn down a couple years ago. It's now an empty lot, and hopefully some good things will happen with that property eventually. But my son, who loved Legos, I love Legos, my son loves Legos, my two granddaughters love Legos, and my son made this replica of my grandfather's gas station. Now, if you look real closely, that's me right there. And then my grandfather, he's back in there somewhere. So yeah, hey Rod, how you doing? So I worked there for probably 5 years or so, starting out when I was in high school, and it was some wonderful times, and it was certainly a different way of life. Back then, you pumped the gas for people, you washed their windshield, you wanted their oil checked, you checked their oil. Hey, would you check the air in my tire? All those were things that were part of the service that was offered to customers that came in and bought gas. And it didn't matter if it was raining, snowing, whatever. They requested something, customer service was essential, and my grandfather was very strong in that. And so those were things that I think served him very well. He was a very successful man here in town, and I don't think you stay in business for 40 plus years by not, being good to your customers and so forth. So we have this old TV here, nothing like what you would see today with the flat screens and so forth. A lot of things on display. I try to get as much, pictures. Like you see, I'm utilizing a door for pictures. As much things, old businesses, receipts from old businesses. Some that are still in existence. Here's some Welch juice receipts. These are from, what year was that? I believe these are from the 1950s, but here's some from 43. We have some receipts here from 1939. So just a wide variety of old receipts, and I do have some others, but just kind of shows these old businesses that were here once upon a time, and people forget those. But these businesses, they come and close, but they're still a part of our history. And for example, up here, Pin High Golf, this is the third variation of the golf course. It was Mark's Golf Course, then Lake Coral owned it for a short while. Now it's called Pin High. That's part of our history. Maybe next year it might be something else, but we want to remember it was Pin High. Pencils, ashtrays, all those kinds of things, matchbooks they had to advertise. They were very common to hand out to customers. A lot of those things don't exist anymore. So I get really excited when I see these things because they are a piece of history. They're a reminder of a business and the people who worked in those businesses that were here. So little things like that are very, very important. Now, here's a picture of Charlie Maxwell in his Detroit Tiger uniform. We just talked about Charlie. We have a lot of old scrapbooks that date back from the Lawton Leader days to the Courier Leader. They're kind of fun to go through. They're pretty much in order. They do move around a little bit, but they're pretty much year to year, and they are marked. So if you're looking for something specific, that's an easy way to find something. We have some school uniforms. We have a couple old band uniforms that were donated by the school. This was donated by Dennis Disbrow. He was in the class of 46. This was his letter sweater. Military uniforms, we have some World War I uniforms. This belonged to Tiny Irons. He was our police chief here in Lawton for, 30, 40 years, a long time. We have some scouting uniforms and so forth. We recently got the VFW uniforms from the Brown family. Mrs. Brown was a member of the VFW, as well as her husband, who served in World War II. Sadly, I'm not able to do this. Every year when the second graders would come down and visit us, I'd always have to take pictures of the kids, a group shot to make sure everybody got in the picture, and then some individual shots. It's sad that you guys can't come down here and be a part of that, but you're in our hearts, and we're bringing this to you so you can at least be able to enjoy some of this. And hopefully when things kind of clear up, you can come down here and visit this place personally and so forth. So, tell your parents, Right now, we're not open regularly, but only by a request of a tour. I'm always happy to share this facility. It belongs to the people, and that's what it's here for. So if you have an opportunity, and tell your mom, your dad, your grandparents, hey, let's go down to the museum. They got some cool stuff down there. So we look around. Oh, darn it, there's another one of those darn text machines. This wasn't working either. Nothing's texting. I don't, confusing. Over here we have a bunch of cameras over the years that people have donated. Some are older. We have a U.S. Navy aircraft camera that was used during World War II. That would have been used on a ship. Over here you're going to see, hey, there's Colonel Sanders. And he's presenting an award to, this is my stepfather. He worked for Kentucky Fried Chicken. And he was awarded from the Colonel himself. And I got to tell you, I hate these KFC commercials because the Colonel was a real person, not just some character. And it just, I don't like them, but I digress. So as we walk along here, we have some items. Here's a nightstick that Tiny Irons, our police chief, utilized. Carried with him for many years as he was a police officer. We also had, this was a device that the police used when they were talking to suspects or getting us, some information on something that may have happened. So they had clear evidence and so forth. So as you can see, there's a little bit of everything. Old wash bucket. We have some old cribs and cradles. Some old dolls that the kids like. Now a lot of people call this the Chucky doll. I don't think it looks like Chucky, but it's old and it's kind of cracked, so it does kind of freak a few people out. But to me, you got to be very careful with her. But I just think you see Chucky in that? No, she's just sweet. Yeah. Lay back down, sweetie. Yeah, there you go. We have an old wheelchair that was donated to us. This dates back to about 1898, I believe. And this was something you would have bought from the Sears catalog. That's what that actually came for. The Sears tag is still on the back of it. Of course, there were no Sears stores that you kind of went to unless you lived in a major city. They might have one. But out here, Sears catalog served a lot of purposes. People bought from Sears. And there's another utilization of the Sears catalog that I'm not going to talk about. Ask your grandparents, they may be able to describe that. It's got something to do with an outhouse. I'll give you a clue. So we have some more pictures. We have some, down here we have some old doctor tools. We have some dental tools, and when I see those dental tools, I just cringe because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, would people be doing with those things? They look like they would just like tear your teeth out, not repair them or fix them. And then we even have some of the medicines in the one doctor bag. And of course, a lot of these medicines over the years, they come to find out these things were probably doing more harm than they were good. So it's just kind of scary to think what some of that stuff might even be in there and so forth. We have a lot of old Lawton leaders. Here's one from 1899. I kind of keep them sealed so that they kind of preserve them. We have a bunch from the early 1900s. Again, here's one from 1921. So there's several of those that date back very, very old. In fact, there's one paper here, and I believe it's the only one in existence that I know of. And this was the Lawton Tribune. And this is dated March 11th, 1871. It's the only paper that I know of of the Tribune that exists. A lot of people, they throw stuff out. They don't really think, that there could be some value to it or some interest in it or some history behind it that could be useful to the museum. Because the museum, it's not just about a bunch of old things, and something doesn't have to be old to be educational. And that's really what the museum is about. It's about educating. A lot of it is educating history. But it's important to have these things so that people can learn from it and just kind of remember. So those are important things to me. Once upon a time, we had a pickle factory here. Now, the pickle factory originally sat down behind like where the Welch's is at. Eventually, they moved to 4th Street, would have been West 4th Street. Now it's just a big empty lot. But that was a thriving business for many, many years. My friends, their fathers owned that business, and I can remember going down there many, many times, going down there and playing on the old salt piles and so forth. And in August, well, not August, usually around July into early August, you could smell the pickles, and that odor would permeate through the air all throughout town. And if I really try hard enough, I can almost smell that right now. It's such a distinct smell. Now, a lot of people didn't like it. I did. And one thing me and a couple of friends did, we would take a wagon, and a lot of times the pickles would fall over the big vats. So we would pick up pickles off the ground, throw them in our wagon, and we would walk around, door to door trying to sell pickles. I think the only people who ever bought them were our grandparents, but hey, we sold a few, so we were happy. And here's another good picture. When I say vats, these would have been while the pickles are in these big vats, going through their processes and so forth. Got a lot of Welch's memorabilia. Welch's, of course, has been one of the biggest employers in Lawton history, and they date back to around the 1920s sometime, when Welch's bought the facility that was owned by the Battle Creek Juice Factory at that time. So they've been around for a long time, so we have a lot of Welch's memorabilia. A lot of people don't know this. This is a picture of some World War II German prisoners of war. And they had a big encampment over in Mattawan where MPI now sits. And the prisoners would go to work at the Welch's plant in Mattawan, which they had at the time, and some would actually be sent over here to Lawton to work. And the word is that a lot of people, the locals, liked them. They got along nice with them. Some stayed here and made the United States their home. So again, we have some old clothing, dresses, just some fabrics, some old shoes. I look at these old shoes and I think, my goodness, how can someone, wear some of these things? And I didn't point it out. You may have seen it on the video. There's an outfit over here that a man and his wife were married, and I think, gosh, that was a tiny little guy. But people were a lot smaller, 100, 150 years ago. When I was in high school, in the 1970s, I was considered a tall person. I go to the mall today and I'm seeing, girls that are 6'3", 6'2", all over the place. So as things have progressed over the years, we've gotten taller. Whether it's things that we're eating or what have you, over time we certainly have grown as human beings and so forth. So again, just some more old things. Now, a little over a year ago, we got two beautiful display cases donated to us by St. Julian Wineries. And so we've been working on getting these, filled up and so forth. And this particular one here, we just have some old tools along with a few other items and so forth. This chair came out of the town hall, which some people know the Red Brick Inn down by where the statue is out of the Civil War soldier. That's where that came from. Again, we talk about work. You made your clothing. You had to have clothes. You didn't go to the store to buy clothes. You made your clothes. And so almost every home would have a spinning wheel in it. This here is what they call a clock reel. This would be used for more things like for linen, sheets and things of that nature. A little variety of stuff. We talked about work. We talked about water. We don't have indoor plumbing, so we got to go out to the well, or we got to go down to the river to get water. So how are we going to bring that back? We're going to put this on our shoulders. We're going to bring back 2 buckets at a time. And it's a lot easier to carry them like this than to carry them like this with your arms. And so depending on how big the family was, depending on how much water you use. But you use water for cooking, for cleaning, all those different things. So if you had a big family, you may be making quite a few trips with these things. So getting water to the house is very important. My great-grandmother, who passed away in 1982, she did not have indoor plumbing. In fact, she still had an outhouse, and she had a well that was just off the house in a little entry room. And that's still, to me, some of the best tasting water I've ever had. But she'd go out there and pump it up and get her how much water she needed, and she could walk right inside her door. So hers was more practical in the sense that it was right there, but that was still no indoor plumbing. She had 8 kids, and all of them offered to do plumbing for her. They all, she, no, I'm happy the way I live. And so, like I said, she passed away in 1982, so it's not like these things weren't available to her. So, again, we'll keep moseying around. Hey, there's a good-looking kid right there. And let's see. Here's a replica of the Methodist Church. The Methodist Church is now outside of town, and another church is utilizing this facility, but it's still being utilized as a church. A lot of military items dating from several different war eras and so forth. This is the World War I uniform from Charles McCann. Some different helmets, guns, just different things that have been part of military usage. There's some Civil War in here. We have some World War I, World War II. We even have a grenade from the Korean War. No, it's not active. Don't worry, we're all safe. We're all safe. So those are some things, and a lot of the boys like them. If you look up here, this is important to our town's history. This quilt was made in 1893. And if you look over here, where the Civil War statue is at, that statue was erected in 1893. And there's a picture of some women above that. And they were known as the Women of the Relief Corps. And that was an organization that was created to help the community when the Civil War started. Now, we kind of talked about Lawton. 1858 was when we first officially became a town, but there was people, here coming from 1848 on. So when the Civil War broke out in 1860, a lot of the area men were going off to war. So these women played a crucial role in keeping this new town that was just now starting to grow, keeping it kind of going a little bit. So in 1893, they wanted to honor the Civil War veterans. So they made this quilt honoring a lot of the local area veterans. Obviously, some had passed on by that time. We're talking, almost, 30 years after the war was over. A lot of these men are still alive, though. And what they did is they went and they got their actual signatures. And then they would use those signatures as templates. So a lot of these signatures that you see on these quilts is the actual signature that was used. So what they did with this quilt, they raffled it off to raise money to get that statue built. They didn't quite make it, and then a couple of the businesses here in town kicked in the extra so they could complete this monument. Now, the man who won the quilt is actually on the quilt, and that's this man right here, and his name was Markham, and he's actually, in this picture from 1899, it shows a lot of the Civil War veterans that were still alive at the time. And number 15 right here, so Maxim, I'm sorry, this was Sam Maxim was his name. He was the gentleman who won the quilt. Now, interestingly enough, when he passed away in the early 1900s, his daughter, who lived in Buffalo, New York, came and took care of the estate, and she took the quilt back home with her. And it sat in a barrel for 30 years or 40 years or so. And finally, at some point, she contacted Lawton as she became elderly and made arrangements to get this sent back to Lawton. So we're very proud to have this back in our home. So there's a lot of history there. One thing too I kind of want to point out, because I think this is very important. You think of the Civil War, we think about slavery and the abolition of slavery and so forth. There's actually 2 men on this quilt, Mr. Stafford and Mr. Varnum, who were African Americans who served for the Union Army in the Civil War. And what I like about this is the fact that the town people here respected them enough. Mr. Varnum ran an ice business here for many years. They were definitely respected and thought of to be honored on this quilt. Because let's face it, back at that time, it didn't matter north or south or whatever. There was still a lot of African-American sentiment. So I think that's kind of special that they did honor these men, that they didn't just, overlook them and so forth. In 1976, our nation turned 200 years old. And so this quilt here was made by the Turkey Sunshine Club. And different businesses, some of the different homes that date back a little bit longer than others were kind of honored on this quilt. We have here, this dates back to, I think, 1870. And this was made for this woman here. She was a baby. This was her graduation picture. And her mother would take this out when she's working on the crops. And she could just kind of move her baby along as she was, you know, working out in the fields, you know, doing the garden or what have you and so forth. Again, we have another nice cabinet over here, one of the other two. So in this one here, we have a lot of business items and so forth. Let's see, the First National Bank of Lawton, they had lots of different giveaways, little toy banks, things of that nature. You saw a lot of that kind of stuff. We have just a variety of things. Some school items. The Spirit Jug, back when I was in school, that was a very popular thing at the pep rallies, you know, 9 through 12. At the pep rallies, at one point, you have to do like a kind of cheer along, and whatever class did the loudest, they would get the Spirit Jug for that week. So that was always a big deal at the pep rallies. Ho Chi Minh sandals. Some of your parents may know what those are. I won't elaborate too much more on what those are, but they came from the Vietnam War era. We have a Lawton Blue Devil mascot costume that was donated to us. You know, I almost wore it today, but no, I'll just kind of show you. So we have that here too. I wish you could hear and you could have questions, because I would just love to keep talking and talking and talking. But again, hopefully you can get down here and visit us. Like I said, right now we don't have regular hours, but I'm always here upon request. We can always work something out. So tell your parents, tell your grandparents, hey, the museum is available, it's open, but we just have to make arrangements to come down here and do a little tour. Because one thing we've missed is not only the library, but, you know, here as well, we've missed having people come in here and see this. This belongs to the people, that's what it's here for. And I love sharing it, and my family dates back a long time, and I have a lot of memories myself, and just I love sharing them. So hopefully this thing will be over, and the second graders next year will be able to come down. But for all you guys there and back at school, I hope you've enjoyed this little tour down memory lane I've had for you, and hopefully I'll be able to see you soon. So enjoy the rest of the school year and have a wonderful summer, and hopefully we'll see you in the future. Thank you.
Hi, welcome to the library. We have lots of books here you can check out. We have stuff like Pete the Cat, Scooby-Doo, we have Disney books, Dr. Seuss, we have Bad Kitty, Paw Patrol, we have superheroes, we have sports, and Star Wars, which is one of my favorites. And then those are all in our series bin right here. And then over here we have our picture books. We have board books down here. We got these cute elephant books about Elmer. And over here we have our holiday section. And we also have a section of I Spy, which we do have a Star Wars I Spy book too, which I like. And then over here, we have our junior fiction chapter books. So like we have American Girl Doll books, we have Bad Kitty, we have Captain Underpants, he's funny. Then we also have like the Brother Band, which a lot of people like, Galaxy Zack, Junior B. Jones is down here. And then we also have like Magic Treehouse, Series of Unfortunate Events. We have, let's see, another good one. We have Percy Jackson, it's another good one. Scooby-Doo, and SpongeBob. Oh, SpongeBob. And then we just have like our regular chapter book section over here, which are all really great. And then over here we have our nonfiction, which is super packed and has lots of a ton of fun stuff. Like over here, we have a book on how to build different kind of Lego things, which is fun. I've taken that home a number of times. And then we have our summer reading stuff over here. So starting June 21st, you can come in, you'll get a bag of prizes and a ton of fun stuff, and then you'll also get a reading log. So for every 10 books that you read, you get a prize. And here are some of our prizes for this year. So we have this headband, which I love it. It's one of those flip sequin headbands. I love those. We got like sunglasses, finger puppets. I love the panda. The panda's my favorite. And then some other fun stuff. We have one of these you can color too. It's a poster, so you can color it, and then you can hang it on your wall, which is kind of fun. And then you'll also get a bag. This is the bag where the prizes will come in. And then we will have craft dates too, so you can come in and we will send home a bag of crafts for you to do at home with your grown-ups. And then at the end of summer reading, we're gonna have a super fun finale. We're gonna post dates later, but it's a ton of fun. Don't wanna spoil it yet. But yeah, so we hope you stop in and check our Facebook and our Instagram and our website, and we'll have lots of stuff posted there. But yeah. Oh, see you later.